because you are you are the go-to in the dating world.
Absolutely not.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, hello, I'm Natalie Vaughn. I'm the host of That's What He Said podcast.
Yes.
So that is a podcast that's all about dating. And I'm absolutely not a guru. I'm not here to give advice. I'm here to facilitate conversation. So that question is absolutely huge. I mean, it's going to be hard to sum it up in a few minutes, but there's definitely a direct correlation between trauma and healing from your trauma or not healing from your trauma and your dating life, your romantic relationships, your relationships in general. So that for me has been a huge part of my journey in my life. I started dating about 12 years ago, like was my first boyfriend. And um, I dated tons of guys. So it was just relationship after relationship that was failing, that was painful, that was unhealthy, that was toxic, that ended in heartbreak, like deep, deep, deep heartbreak that almost wasn't even like appropriate for the level of the relationship. Like there were times where I was like, am I going to die? Like, can you die from getting dumped? Like I was like just in so much physical heartache that there were literally times I remember Googling, like, can you die from a broken heart?
Wow.
And so I got to a point in my mid 20s. I had done therapy a couple of times off and on in my life, but I went to therapy, basically going to my therapist, like, what is happening? Like, I don't understand. How do I keep ending up in the same situation over and over and over again? And because I would like get through a relationship, come out on the other side, heartbroken, scathed, like in shambles, and then look back at what I did in that relationship and the choices that I made and be like, who was that? Like, that's not even me. Like, it felt like there was something else inside of me that was driving my choices. And then when I could finally see clearer afterwards, like after I got out of it, I was like, I don't even understand who was doing that. And the answer is it was my trauma. My trauma and my my trauma that was driving my thought patterns and my behavior patterns was making my choices for me. And it's like my actual self, my soul, who I am, was like in the back seat, just like along for the ride. And all that to say, when you have trauma, which most of us do, especially like my audience, I'm 30 years old. So most of my audience is like millennials or Gen X. And if you're single at this point, like you probably got something wrong with you. You've probably been through some stuff. So, not healing from your trauma is going to lead to what I just described. I mean, it's going to lead to despair and sin and making bad choices. And that only spirals over time. Like you're not just going to wake up one day and stop doing that without any sort of effort or change. So
when you say when you say your trauma was driving you, like what would you say your trauma drove you to do? And another question with that, do you remember what that was like? Do you remember like being in the moment of dating or whatever that was, and when your trauma, if you will, took over?
Yeah, absolutely. So my trauma was driving me to make choices that were attempting to heal myself or attempting to fill a hole that I had that I didn't know that I had or fill a void. So an example of that for me personally was like I discovered that I had this really deep desire to feel chosen, and not just to feel chosen, but to feel chosen over something else. And so I would find myself in situations with guys who were unavailable, like emotionally unavailable, or there was something between me and him having a healthy relationship. And I found myself pouring everything I had into it. Like if I can just show him that I'm good enough, if I can show him that I can be what he wants, then he will choose me over X. So that might be over another girl, or that might be over physical distance, dating people who live far away, whatever that may be. And that's just one example. There's a lot of ways, but yeah. What was the second half of your question?
It was, did you
Yeah.
go ahead.
In the moment.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit hard to answer. Because everything, like, hindsight is 2020.
Right.
But there were definitely moments. I would say there were moments. There was definitely a huge lack of awareness. Like, I would just get tunnel vision. It's like my trauma would take over and then I could only see like this much. But I would have moments of being able to see clearly. And I think that was really like the Holy Spirit tugging on me and saying, like, this is not right, or this doesn't feel right, or this is never going to happen, or this is going to end badly. This is not going to work out. But I was not equipped at the time to be able to recognize that, much less fight it. So I would just keep rolling with it. And then I could look back and say, why didn't I pay attention to that? I could hear it. I felt it, but I just wasn't equipped at the time.
Do you feel like, when did you start to realize that, man, I got to get some help? Like, I've got to get into therapy? Or were you kind of in therapy during that time? Like what was the moment for you? You're like, oh, bro, I need some help.
The moment for me was I had gone through probably the worst breakup, and it was very messy even afterwards for a long time. And this was somebody who I thought, like, gun to my head, this is the one, this is the guy. And I was horribly wrong about that. But I got to the point because I felt stuck. It had been like 2 years since that relationship actually ended, and I felt like I was losing myself almost entirely. Like, I was making choices in my life that were just, I was like, I don't even recognize myself in the mirror anymore. And I didn't know how to get out. I felt numb. I felt like I was doing things because I was so numb that I was doing things so that I could feel something. And it started to scare me because I was like, I'm doing things that I would never do. And it's scaring me where this is going to take me if I continue on this path.
I lost. Where'd you go? Natalie, where'd you go? Oh, I lost you. Oh, I thought you were gone forever.
I don't know what happened.
I don't either.
Maybe just the Wi-Fi.
Man, so that is so helpful, because who I want you to speak to, Natalie, is somebody who has experienced some trauma, and who has which like you said, many of us have. And today I want to talk about like big T trauma, like things that are like, not like, I mean, I don't want to get into that, but something just massive has happened in so many people's lives that has created in them just sadness, just ways that they're responding to certain things, massive triggers, being down, maybe angry, maybe coping in different ways, all the different stuff. And so as we're talking, this next question I have for you could probably answer that. What are and you kind of answered it, but maybe you can get a little bit more into it. Those red flags. Like, what are some red flags in dating that might be super harmful for someone who's healing from trauma?
Yeah, that's I'm going to paint with broad strokes because there's so many different types of trauma, and not all of it's recognized. Another thing about me is I do have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I even started into a clinical psych grad program after that. And long story short, it just wasn't going to take me where I wanted to go. So I quit that. But yet again, here I am talking about trauma. So, a clinical person would say, oh, the only real trauma is like the threat of death or perceived threat of death. So that's when you're going to think of like VA people, people who are in combat and have PTSD from that. But there's also emotional trauma, which is not always recognized, and all different kinds. So, I have 4 different answers to that question.
Love.
Number 1, as a red flag, would be somebody, if you're a victim of abuse, whatever type of abuse, someone who acts like your abuser. So if you're dating somebody and you start to see signs that they do things that remind you of your abuser, or you're often left feeling the way that your abuser made you feel. So that is your trauma that you've been through, putting you back in a situation that's familiar, even though it's not healthy. You're choosing a person that reminds you of the person that abused you.
Yes.
Number 2 would be if the relationship that you're in makes you act like your abuser. So it's really common, unfortunately, for victims of abuse to become abusers. And I think there's definitely room for healing in that. And that's definitely not always the case, but it is common. So if find yourself in a situation where you start acting the way that your abuser acted towards you, that's a huge red flag that, number 1, get out. And number 2, you probably need to seek help as well. Number 3 would be someone who doesn't give grace to you when you're battling your own triggers, when you're trying to heal from your trauma. Because the thing about dating is it's not a linear course. There's going to be lots of ups and downs. And when you're getting to know someone, when you're creating intimacy and you're dating and getting closer to this person, it's not going to be perfect. And if you're someone who's experienced trauma, there's going to be obstacles where you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that triggered me. Or they may do something that triggers you and they don't know. So you react to it and then you later have to explain yourself. So someone who doesn't give grace to that, so like someone who might just ghost you in that instance, which has happened to me, someone who just pulls away or gets mad at you or tells you you're crazy or they don't understand or you're overreacting. I mean, like there's so much toxic behavior that can come out of that. That's another sign to leave, in my opinion, because that person is not equipped to handle what you're bringing into the relationship. Everyone's going to bring baggage into a relationship, and they don't have the capability to handle your baggage, or maybe they don't want to.
Right.
And then the last one would be an unhealthy attachment style. So if you're not familiar with what attachment styles are, it's something to look into because, for example, I'm someone who I definitely have an anxious attachment style, and that can be really, really harmful and detrimental to me if I'm with someone who has an avoidant attachment style. So what that means is the anxious person wants to cling and run and do anything to keep you. I'll do anything to keep you around. And the avoidant person, in the face of conflict, does the opposite. They run.
Wow.
And they will avoid confrontation. They'll avoid intimacy at all cost. And so you've got one person chasing and one person running. And it's extremely harmful to the person chasing.
That is so good. And you said you're not the pro. I mean, that was fire right there.
I'm not the pro.
So
I'm just speaking from my truth, my experiences.
Oh my gosh. So let me go through those again. I think I missed one.
Okay.
You said there's 4 or 5?
4.
Okay, then I got them all. Someone that reminds you of your abuser, someone that makes you act like your abuser, someone that doesn't give grace, and then attachment style.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are massive red flags. And if you're watching this and you have any questions, I would love for you to, put it in the comments where, what question do you have for Natalie or myself in any way that we can serve you? We would love to help you out. And, I don't know, please, if you have any questions, go ahead and put that in the comments. So of those red flags, Natalie, what would you say what of those, how do I ask this question? Of the red flags, which did you kind of struggle with the most?
Um, I would say definitely the attachment style, but I don't think I was aware of it until pretty recently. Like that
Mhm.
was something that kind of right before the podcast that I um uncovered. And then once I uncovered it, I saw where it was present in every single relationship.
Wow.
And that's part of why I would not only pursue a relationship that I knew was bad for me, but I would stay and like fight, and I would continue. It didn't matter what he was doing or what he was not doing, or how badly I was treated, or didn't matter, because it wasn't about him, it was about me and fulfilling that hole, that void, like I mentioned earlier. So it was like, if I can just get him to stay, do anything, chase this relationship until, my feet are bleeding, then I'll be enough. Then I'll finally proven to myself that I can do this. And that is so unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you realize that?
Well, if you watch one of my episodes that is called The Guy Who Ghosted Me,
Okay.
that was the situation that exposed that to myself. Um, I don't know. I can't tell you exactly how, because it wasn't that much different from other relationships, other than the fact that I would probably say he does have that avoidant attachment style, which is not something I think I've ever encountered before. So
Mm.
it was like just two complete opposite extremes when this conflict occurred, that it became really obvious. I also think I was just in a place maturity wise where I was actually able to see, like I didn't have that super tunnel vision that I had in the past. Um but yeah, I mean, in the face of conflict, basically, I was overly anxious and overly reactive, and he ghosted. He was just absolutely gone, nowhere to be found. Never saw him, never heard from him again.
Gosh.
Yeah. Well, not for a while at least, but
Yeah.
and that was crazy to me. I had never experienced a person like that.
And how long was like after the ghosting situation? And they can go and listen to this and watch it, but how long did it take for you to kind of heal from that?
Um I mean, I would say I was back at baseline after probably 4 to 6
Hmm.
weeks. But I think it's something I'm still healing from.
Yeah.
It's been over 6 months.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you currently dating anybody right now?
No. Mm-mm.
She's single. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So in your experience, what are like some of the challenges that people who've experienced trauma face when they want to start dating again? So for example, for you, you've taken a break, you're on, from a past experience. What what are the challenges as they kind of get back into it? Or what are some tips maybe you can give as people start to look to date again after they've experienced trauma? And I don't think just, well, dating, yes, because I think after a divorce, I
Mhm.
think that there's some big time things that uh can really get you stuck. For me, for example, I went through a divorce. I was married for 5 years, and when she left me, I literally thought, like, that's all she wrote. Like, I am not doing this again. It was so hurtful. It was so painful. And I was like, this is not happening.
Yeah.
Um, but for you, I mean, that was, shoot, 16 years ago. So I'm all old now, and I'm totally winning with Erica. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
What are some things that you would say to somebody, like some challenges as they kind of, I think one of those things is easing back into a relationship. But what else would you say?
Yeah, easing into it is important. I think the biggest challenge across the board is probably trust issues, because I think that trust issues can be a symptom of all different types of trauma. Like, it's trust issues are almost kind of like a common language for anyone who's ever been through something, anyone who's ever been hurt by someone. And it can take many different forms. What do your trust issues look like? How does it make you act or react? So I think something that is really common now, again, amongst my generation, is like hyper independence. You think, I can't trust anyone to not hurt me again, so it's safer to just be alone. And being alone becomes a lot easier than not being alone and trying to be with someone, because it's just so anxiety provoking. It's so scary to trust somebody when you have trust issues, that you're like, why? Like, I just want to keep my peace. So that's hard. I don't know that I have like the best advice or tips on that, but something that I always say in my life is do it scared. You can be afraid of something and do it, especially when you have God on your side. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Everybody knows that verse. And you can do something that's scary and also be scared and also do it, like, all at the same time. You don't
That's
have to let fear come between you and something, assuming that what you're pursuing is good. Because even if it's a guy that's amazing, that's not going to take the fear away. It doesn't matter who it is. So yeah, and so that I would say, just lean into God and pray on your knees if you're starting to date somebody and it's scary, because you want to be able to discern, is it scary because this is bad for me, or is it scary just because of my own stuff?
It's good. It's really good. We do have a question here from Josh. And Josh he says, how does someone pursue somebody with big trauma? How do we navigate that, or how can we support that?
Yeah. First of all, be patient. You have to really be patient. And if you're the man leading the relationship, I think you need another man who's been there or who is married to to mentor you.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah, because I'm not the pursuer, so I can't even give like a direct answer to that. But having patience with that person and always asking questions, like, be curious and ask, because a lot of times if you're the person with a trauma, there's something that you want to express. There's a way that you need to express yourself, but you don't know how. You might be expressing anger, but you're not even angry. You're afraid, or you're hurt, or you're triggered, and it's coming out as anger. And the other person's like, why are you angry with me? I didn't do anything. So in those instances, you can't be reactive. You just have to have patience and ask and give that person time and uncover that stuff layer by layer. But also, if they're not willing, if the person with the trauma is not willing to work with you and to be open and vulnerable, then it's probably not their time.
I think that's so good. And I'll kind of take a try at it as well. I think something that, as we answer the question, how does someone pursue somebody with big trauma? How do we navigate that? How do we support them? I mean, very similar to what you just said, Natalie. I think sometimes we need to pause. We see that hot girl out there, that hot dude out there, and we're like, and maybe they've experienced trauma. And in this situation, we're going to say that they have, since that was the question. And sometimes the person that experienced trauma is not ready to get into a relationship, although they may feel like it. And for you, as somebody who may be coming into a relationship is a little bit more healthy at that time, that person may just be looking for something to anything, like anything at all to grab onto. And so I would say, as you're navigating this together, if you can pause for a second in the pursuing, or even in the relationship, and just really take time to truly make sure that person is healing, number one. Because like for me, I told you it's been 16 years since my divorce, and it is still hurtful. Like it still comes up, and I've got to watch that, and I've got to guard that. But is that person really ready to be in a relationship? And if you care for that person, then it's going to be okay to wait, or it's going to be okay to take your time in that pursuing.
Yeah. Definitely.
I've seen a lot of people get into relationships where, man, it was not time. It was not time. Because the other person's like, let's get married tomorrow, and this person's like, yeah, and then they get married, and it's like, what just happened? Like, I should not be here today.
Yeah.
So, and I think number one, also what Natalie said is we've got to search out what the Lord is saying. Like, have you been in the Word? Have you truly sat and listened and paused and spent time with Him before you get into this relationship? Is the person, will you be equally yoked? Like, that's a whole nother thing. Like, is that person pursuing the Lord more than they're pursuing you? I think that's important. And I love, Natalie, what you said about having somebody with you, another dude saying, hey, all right, yay or nay, time to go. Someone that's keeping you accountable, someone that you're being real with is really good, Natalie. So
yeah,
that's good.
Yeah. The mentor aspect is so valuable. I mean, that's been like the most valuable thing I think in my life, is having a strong mentor.
That's huge.
And you have been one of them.
Oh, stop it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. Everyone. Michael is my youth pastor when I was in high school, and I was a baby Christian. And you actually, I think you were the first, you were the first pastor that ever said something on a stage that was relatable and like real. And you were like on stage in like your Jordans. And I was like, who is this? I was like, who is this guy? And so ever since then, like, you're definitely somebody who has been a very strong mentor to me.
Well, that means a lot. That means a whole lot. And if you guys have any other questions, please put them in here. Josh, thank you for that. Wendy says, I'm not a millennial, but this stuff is golden. So thank you for that, Wendy. And anything else, any questions you guys have for us, we would love to spend some time answering those questions. And I just want to say thank you for being on here today. Like, there's so many of you that are watching this live stream, and that means a lot. And just so you guys know that are watching this, I will edit this up into different pieces and different segments so you can go back and watch the replay of this. So Natalie, you have this podcast that I absolutely love. I was so proud when I saw this happening. And I think I just love people going for it. I love people kind of punching fear in the face and going for it. And with you in this podcast, solely focused on dating. I love how niche that it is. It's gotten way down. Like, how do you address issues related to past traumas and stuff with your guests?
That's also a pretty broad question. But not only with okay, so I'll say the show is just a reflection of like my real life. So, when my love language is quality time. So when I would be hanging out with friends, like, I would like want to sit and have deep conversations. Like, I didn't want to like go outside and play basketball. Like, I wanted to like, let's just sit and talk. My best friend that I made in college, we were roommates in our dorm, and we would go stretch in the hallway. She was a cheerleader, I was a dancer. So we'd be like, let's go stretch and talk. And we would be in the hallway of our dorm stretching for like hours, just talking and asking questions. So part of that for me too is that the way that I treat people in my life and my guests is everybody has a story, and I treat people that way. People are not black and white. They don't fit into boxes. And when you try to do that with people, you'll never understand them. I think that's a huge issue in our dating culture, is like, men want to say, well, women are this way, women do this, and they want this. And women are saying, well, men are this way, they all cheat, they're all terrible. And you want to like categorize each other, which is only going to create division, because like I said, you'll never understand people, much less someone that you want to date and marry, without treating them like a person and like they have a story, and then being curious and uncovering what that story is and hearing what they have to say. So, like I said earlier, I think trauma is what got a lot of us where we are now. Actually, that clip that we discussed where Kelsey's speaking, she kind of explains that. And I think it's imperative as people, and then for me as a podcast host, to talk about that. I mean, that was my whole goal for the podcast, was like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, ask the hard questions and have the hard conversations.
Let me share that clip that you're talking about. I think that would be helpful for people. Let's see. Can you hear it?
No, it's on mute.
Oh.
The things that I did in my last 10 years of dating have absolutely ended me up where I am now. Because I didn't set the boundaries, because I wasn't upfront and honest about what I want long term, because we're scared. We're scared that if you tell somebody that you want long term to be married and have children, they're gonna be like, oh my God, and freak out. That can be scary to some people to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why women aren't saying it, because they're like, well, I don't want to scare them off.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, you know what, I'd rather have this little dopamine hit for 3 weeks or 2 months instead of setting boundaries. Because
can you hear it,
dinner
Natalie?
with a nice guy who's attractive is great. Getting a little cuddle, making out, having sex occasionally, those are nice things.
Mm-hmm.
They make us feel good.
Yeah.
But it's not getting us to where we want to be if what we're saying we want is true. If I had sex with him, it's because I wanted to. But
tell me when it started over.
100%.
It started over.
Okay.
Means that I did in my last 10.
So let's break that down. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so that clip, that's probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite clip of all my reels so far, because it's so relatable to so many women right now that are single, this generation, that want marriage. You know, in that clip, Kelsey is taking accountability for the decisions that she has made over the last 10 years that have ended her up where she is now, which is still single and searching and yearning for marriage and a family. And kind of like I was alluding to earlier, when your trauma is guiding you, you make decisions that are not necessarily conducive to your goal. And it's important to take accountability for those things and recognize them, like she did, which is amazing, and call them out to yourself, you know. And that's what we try to do on the show, is have some of these hard conversations to expose those unhealthy thoughts and unhealthy patterns of behavior that we all have, without passing judgment on anybody. You know, she's being very vulnerable, mentioning that, like, you know, sex is part of that. And that's the reality that we live in, you know, especially within the Christian community. People want to be hush hush about who's having premarital sex, but like that hurts the people that are doing it, because it needs to be talked about, and it needs to be talked about from a place without judgment. And I personally never saw that in my life growing up as a Christian. Not to place blame. Again, I take accountability for my own actions, but that's part of what I want on the show, is all walks of life and just realness. Like, again, let's just talk about it.
Let's talk about it then. So when it comes to premarital sex, like in you saying that in the Christian circle, in the Christian world, like, what does that mean? Go. What are you not saying?
So when I say premarital sex, I mean, like, I just feel like within the Christian circle, again, speaking to my own experience, the places that I grew up in, which were amazing, the churches I grew up in, but the truth was like lacking in that area, because if you were having sex outside of marriage, which most of us have, it was like shameful. So it was like, I'm going to hide this from my mentors and my pastors and my friends who aren't doing it, because if I tell them, then it's going to be like, well, you know, the Bible says you shouldn't be doing that. And that's not helpful, because I don't even know why I'm doing it other than it feels good. You know, there were definitely times where I was like, I don't even really want to be doing this, but again, there's something making me do it. Well, like I said earlier, it's real easy to feel chosen when you're having sex with somebody and you're the only person there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of lots of various reasons that people may run to sex that are dealing with trauma internally and they don't even know why. And that's not to say everybody wants to wait till marriage.
Right.
That's definitely not the case for a lot of people. But there are also people, even though they don't want to wait till marriage, they're having sex before they want to. They would like to hold out longer, especially women. They would like to hold out until there's some form of commitment, and they're not, because as Kelsey was explaining, if you're yearning for something, yeah, having sex feels good, feeling chosen in that way, feeling that form of intimacy, that dopamine hit. You know, if you're craving that and you're not getting that, and maybe you feel like you never will, maybe you feel like you're not worthy of marriage, of getting toward, you're never going to get past the finish line, then you're like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take this dopamine hit, this crumb right now, because I'll never make it to where I want to be.
I think that's so good and so convicting for the church and for myself as somebody who was, my gosh, I mean, it's what I did for 22 years. And I wish so many times I could go back and redo stuff, which is silly because God's like, I mean, it was all good. I mean, you did what you did.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I really, really, really love now looking at times the guilt and the shame that, again, I didn't put it on people, but I think sometimes the church can do that and not really meaning to.
Yeah.
As people walk into the church on Sunday morning after a Saturday night of doing all the things and all the people, and they come in and they're just like, golly, I am a failure. I am nothing. And so what do? Is we hide it. We hide it. We hide it. We hide it. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And then it's just continues to hurt us.
Yeah.
And I think it's so great, Natalie, that you have opened a spot for people to go to and for people to learn and for people to hear that they're not alone. I mean, I know for me, some of the best things that I can hear is, hey, Michael, you're not alone. Like, I also struggle with this. I also struggle with this. And kind of being in group sessions with people and they're like, oh yeah, oh, I'm not alone. You did that too? Oh my gosh.
Definitely.
And so you're providing that. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is so
and,
good.
You know, and I'm guilty as well, because when I was a student in the church, I was a leader, and instead of being real about what I struggled with and being like, hey, I struggle with these things, but I also am a leader in this church. I can do both. You know, every leader up here is a sinner. You just don't know about it. You know, instead of doing that, I just became a chameleon and tried to blend in with all of the other kids that seemed like they weren't struggling with things either. And just to look, you know, like this picture perfect Christian that I was not. And to, you know, look that way under the spotlight, quite literally. And so, you know, if I could go back, I would have voiced some of those things to my mentors. Maybe it would have kept me off the stage sometimes, but I think it would have I would have gotten help, and it would have prevented me from, you know, more bad decisions down the line. Again, we can't go back, but I think it's important to talk about in regards to the church.
Yeah. And I think it's also, you know, what you're saying is so good so to the person out there kind of feeling this, like you're stuck and you don't know what to do. And it may lose, you know, the spotlight, it may lose different stuff. Here's what I know is if Natalie would have come to me, or anybody would currently come to me and say, man, here's this. And now what I'm getting to do, Natalie, as far as like my coaching, is people come to me and they tell me things. And as soon as we voice that, as soon as we say those things, it's cool to see some of my clients just be set free.
Yep.
Set free, because I've never said it before. They've never said I had an affair. They've never said I struggle with porn. They've never said, you know, all these things before, and it's setting them free. And here's why. Here's what we got to remember. And it's hard to know this, especially when you're a teenager, you know, or even a college student. You're like, I can't share this. Like I can't say it. But the person that you want to share to, you obviously trust them enough that their response to you is going to be love. It's going to be, I'm so glad you said this. I am so glad you said this. And then the release that you feel is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I even was still doing that, still hiding up until last year. I mean, I was 29 years old and I finally came clean to my mentor, who I'm extremely close to, Sarah Stanley. Her and her husband are in one of my episodes. And I finally told her the truth about things that I had been hiding from her because out of fear, and because that relationship it did start in the church. It was rooted in that place. And so to the adult age of 29, I was still afraid to tell her, you know, what I was truly struggling with and what I was doing. But it was met with so much love. I mean, I was like, probably my teeth were chattering as I was telling her. I was like 2 glasses of wine in, and I was like, I gotta tell her. And it was just, she was just she met me with complete love and no judgment whatsoever and complete support.
And most people are going to respond that way. But the enemy has us so locked in that you can't say anything. Like just keep it in, just keep it in, keep it in. Then what do? We cope more, we cover it up, and it just starts to compound. I remember for me, when I was at On-Site, which, as you know, I was there for 45 days in 2019. And I remember they had like family weekend where like your family gets to come and we're all excited. Like all the people like, woo, like we get family. And our family members are like, I am scared to death to go to this place with all these psychos. Like what are we doing? All these people who've experienced trauma. Yeah. And my wife came, and what we had to do is we had to sit like knee to knee with all of our other people around us. And we had to let them know our biggest regrets. And girl, that was so hard.
I'm sure.
You know, one of those regrets was that, hey, I've been gambling and we're $20,000 in debt because of it. And it was like, I was so nervous about it, like so nervous about it. And she was like, okay. And I was like, wait, what? That's it? It was so freeing to me.
Yeah.
And these other regrets and things that I had just held on to. So there were even things, Natalie, that I was hanging on to that I hadn't shared with her, that we weren't even married and weren't even dating. Like there was stuff like so far back that I had just locked up. And I think as people move into a relationship, as they're moving into their dating, or maybe they're in a dating relationship, I would say, man, let's take some time to pause again and really get to know each other. What are the things that are you've just got to talk about? And maybe it's not that person you're dating, but maybe it is, like Natalie said, a mentor, a pastor, a counselor, and watch what happens when you're set free, or a coach. I mean, my gosh, it's what I do. I coach people every day. And the goal of that is that they can break free from their trauma and be able to walk in freedom. And why do I do that? I do that because that's my life. That is what has happened to me.
Yep.
And I promise you can do it. I promise you. It's the power of our voice. I have a question here from Kate May. It's coming from Instagram. Okay. And it is, she says, let's see here. Boom. What's your advice to maintaining a healthy relationship after leaving a toxic one? And so, Kate, we talked about that a little bit earlier, so you can go back and watch that replay here in a little bit. But Natalie, do you have anything you'd like to tell Kate?
Maintaining a healthy relationship after a toxic one. I think my biggest answer is probably one that people don't want to hear, but I think you need to go to therapy. I think if you've ever been in a toxic relationship, if you didn't go to therapy and process that afterwards, the relationship that you're calling healthy probably is not. So that's just, I mean, it's like washing your hands after you go to the bathroom.
That's a good idea.
You just have to do it. Yeah.
That's so good. You got to wash your hands after you go to the bathroom.
Yeah. I mean, I once heard, I don't remember where I heard this. There's a celebrity somewhere said this, but like, you know, we do, ideally, we do all these things to like take care of our health. You exercise, you eat healthy, you drink water, you stay away from certain things, you get sunlight. But a lot of people, and this is also a cultural thing, they don't really understand that your brain is part of your body. So if we do all these things to take care of our bodies, why are we not doing things to take care of our brain? You know, you need to go through therapy to go through that washing process of your brain, of your thoughts, and keep it healthy, keep it clean, just like you would go to the gym.
That's so good. And it's so true. If I fell, I use that example quite a bit. If I fell and broke my arm, just like just now, if I fell out of my chair and broke my arm, then that would go viral. And you're like, hey, let's keep talking. And my arm's like, bent out, like sideways nasty. Hey, let's just talk. It'll be okay. It'll feel better. Just put a Band-Aid on it. And it's not going to feel better. It's not going to heal. It's just going to end up, I'm going to have a jacked up arm. The same thing is true with our brain. We see so many things. And Natalie, to Kate, getting in therapy, that is a hard step. I'll be honest with you, Natalie, it's hard for me. It's hard for clients to come to me. Like, it really is. Like, Michael, how many clients do you have? Well, I've got a few, but people aren't just like knocking down my door.
Yeah, definitely.
To tell me their stuff. It's not like, hey, you know what? I'm a jacked up human and I need your help. People don't do that.
Right.
But you're seeing right now, those who are watching this, you're seeing two people who have worked really hard on their stuff. And because of that, we're able to walk a little bit more free. Is every day great? No, it's not. Every day is not great. But neither is our health and fitness. And so take care of your mind. Take care of your mind. Well, Natalie, what are some other ways? I would love to hear you because I follow you. I stalk you on all the Instagrams and all the things. And I love the stuff that you talk about health.
Yeah, I haven't scared you off yet.
No, my gosh. I love it. Like, it's so awesome.
Yeah.
What are some things? And if you don't follow Natalie, you need to follow Natalie. And you can find all that in the notes of how to find her. But it's Natalie Vaughn. Anyways, what are some good health tips that you would give somebody while dating?
Oh, yes. I'm going to have a whole episode on this, actually. At some point, I haven't decided how or with who, but I do plan. So subscribe and you'll find out when it comes out.
Do it right now.
I do. I plan to, I plan to do a whole episode about women's hormones and like, are your hormones keeping you single? But that's another conversation.
Gosh, that's good.
But as far as health,
are your hormones keeping you single?
First of all, if you look good, you feel good. And if you look good, more single people want to talk to you. So take care of yourself. Like, go to the gym. Don't eat crap. Don't put crap in your body, because not only does it make you less attractive, it makes you not feel good. You don't feel good. Your brain doesn't function as well. So like kind of like stuff I was mentioning earlier about thought processes and stuff like that. If your brain doesn't have the nutrients that it needs to be able to process what you're maybe talking about in therapy, it's not going to do anything. So like, as far as like practical tips, my number one is every time you eat, there has to be something on your plate that came out of the ground. Everybody can do that. That's simple and easy. More filtered water, less caffeine. No, cut out processed sugar. Eat things that are nutrient dense. So like, grass-fed beef is something that's, in my opinion, the most nutrient dense food that you can eat. And then daily exercise. So for me, sometimes that looks like a 20-minute walk outside, like a stroll, not a walk, a stroll. And sometimes that looks like, a high intensity workout in the gym, lifting heavy weights. But it's so good for your confidence, your health, long-term health, preventing things like cancer, heart disease, depression. Depression's the number one diagnosed disease today. And, if you're depressed, you're certainly not out there looking for your future spouse. So I could go on about that for days, but those are some like simple starting points I think everybody should be doing, practicing.
So good. That was, guys, if you got anything, that was fire right there. That was so good. And she's living it. So
yes,
I think that's very important. One more question, Natalie, and we're gonna lock this down. How can a spiritual perspective help individuals who are dealing with trauma and trying to date?
Yeah, this is really the most important question that you've asked me. So for me, without my relationship with God, I would not be sitting here today. I don't even know that I'd be alive today. I mean, So the short version of sort of my story is I have an older sister. Our parents got divorced when I was in kindergarten, first grade. And they got divorced because my mom came out as a lesbian and she left my dad and chose to live a homosexual lifestyle. And she's had 2 long-term partners that were women since then. And both of those relationships for her were very unhealthy, very toxic, very chaotic. So I grew up around a lot of chaos and a lot of inconsistency. And to say that it was unconventional is like a huge understatement, especially at that time. You know, you're talking the late 90s. This was like very taboo. And then my dad never remarried. He was a single dad, still is. So for me, and he's a Christian, but that, you know, we just didn't have that like strong family unit growing up. So I did not learn what a healthy relationship between a husband and a wife looks like. I did not learn what a healthy romantic relationship is supposed to be. I didn't even learn what marriage is. Like, quite literally, did not understand what it is. And what I did learn through my mom's relationships was very, very toxic behavior. And when I was 14, I always say I didn't ask to be saved. God just plucked me out and he said, yeah, we're going to take you. I'm going to plant the Holy Spirit in you because I need you to do XYZ with your life. And so we're just going to go ahead and do this. I had like an actual physical experience. I was at a church camp, very like typical story, but I was 14. I was in a room, sitting in a chair. There was a guy on stage playing How Great Is Our God with an acoustic guitar. And I had my elbows on my knees, my head in my hands, and I was just sobbing. I mean, I was weeping. And I didn't really know why. I knew that at that point, I was very aware that I was a very angry person. I was absolutely not the person that you know. And I was dealing with so much of that pent up trauma and anger, and at such a young age, not understanding it. And I felt chills all over my body. I felt physical weight. I felt like I was all the weight of the world, the weight of everything I had been through since a 5-year-old little girl was literally on my back. Like I was in a hunched over position. But at the same time, like in an instant, I felt it all lifted. Like God literally came and took it from me. And he said, I'm taking this off of you. You're mine now. And I remember the next day telling my friend who had invited me to the camp, I said, I don't know what happened, but I just feel different. Like, I don't know why, but I feel really different. And then it wasn't until the first time I heard you preach that I understood salvation. You were telling your testimony. And again, you were super relatable and you explained salvation and you gave an invitation. And when you explained salvation, I was like, oh, that's what happened to me. Wow. And from then on, I just was pursuing God. But that has been a very, very bumpy road because just because I had a relationship with God, that didn't take away any of the trauma that I had experienced and was going to continue to experience. And at the end of the day, God has always been my anchor. I mean, he is this anchor, like at the bottom of an ocean. I'm on this rope. And there have been times where I have tried to like run, like I have tried to detach from that anchor. And like, he doesn't let me, like he is always there as an anchor for my soul, quite literally, no matter what I'm going through, whether I'm battling with my past trauma, whether I'm in one of those toxic relationships, whether I'm struggling with depression, whatever it may be. And without that, I don't believe there's a way to truly overcome your trauma. I don't think that you can do that without the healing power of God.
For sure.
I think you can probably improve some of your behaviors, but you can't truly heal your heart and soul without him. He's your creator. He created you. There's a saying that the power that created the body is the power that heals the body. So, yeah, he's always been there for me. My favorite verse, I wrote it down because I was like, I can't mess it up talking to Michael Head. James chapter 1, verse 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So that's my favorite verse of all time. I always come back to it. Every time I come to it during a hard time, I learn something new. Now that is the power of God's word, is it's the living word. What that means to me is that you can go back to the same passage over and over again, and the Lord will read it to you in a different way. And he's reading that to you through the Holy Spirit. And that has just, I grip onto that sometimes, because there have been situations where I'm like, this trial, this hardship, this pain, I cannot escape it. It might be my life. It might be the household that I'm living in. He is promising that there is purpose in my suffering and in the battle that I'm fighting. And he's promising that when I endure these trials, when I fight, Sarah always tells me, battle. She's like, when I'm in the face of it, she's like, you just have to battle, like pretend you're in a battle. And doing that not only brings me closer to him, but it makes me more mature and more complete as a human, as a woman. And like I said, there's no way, there is no earthly way that I would be sitting here talking to you if it was not for God and for that day that I surrendered and said, I can't do this anymore.
Amen. I think, golly, that's so good. You just got done preaching.
I mean, that's just the truth. That's my life.
It is the truth. And surrender is so hard. Surrender is so hard. It's just hard. It's hard. It's hard to, when we walk around and we've got all our life like this, we think we have it like this. And it's like, no, if I open up, like, oh, and then the Lord's like, yeah, now I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
Consider it pure joy. Consider it pure joy. And how hard is that? To consider it joy when we've gone through hard things. But for me, I'm able to look back on some of the hard things. And I know it's saying for you, as you just said, able to look back on those things and think, wow, that's pretty awesome. And the joy in that hard time, we didn't see it, but it's there because of what now for me, what I'm walking through. Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense, but now I can see that. And it doesn't mean when things happen, if you're watching this, you're like, what the crap are they talking about? How do you consider it pure joy? It doesn't mean like when the bottom falls out in your life, you're like, praise the Lord. Oh God, praise him. No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that the way that you are isn't based on your circumstances. Everything that happens to you isn't, if it's kind of like a seesaw, Natalie. If we base our joy / happiness on like it were a seesaw, then everything we see and we saw, it just goes up and down. It's based on the circumstance of that, versus a swing set, and it's stuck into the ground and it never moves. And even though we're moving, it never moves. And that is joy. That is joy.
Yeah. And sometimes you can praise the Lord and have that visible joy in the midst of those. I mean, when I was growing up in church, being a part of a Christian dance team, well, I'm a dancer. And so there were times, the times that I have experienced the most joy in my life by worshiping God through dance on that team were also the times that I was going through the darkest, most perverted, most just awful trauma that most people don't understand. I was doing that during the day and then going home to this very toxic, unhealthy household at night. And I didn't have a choice in that.
Yeah.
But the joy, despite all that, it's untouchable. It's like it's a glimpse of heaven when you are able to live that way. So
good. Well, Natalie, we were supposed to go 30 minutes and we went an hour, which I love. I think that's awesome. And so I'll put in the notes every way that people can find you. You're super easy to find. And do you have any closing remarks? One last thing that you would like to say?
Yes. I think, to your point, you're not alone. If you're single and you're looking for true love, you're looking for marriage, you want family, but you feel stuck and you feel like something's wrong with me, or that's, I'm not cut out for that. I guess it's just not in the cards for me. You're not alone in feeling that way. And it's not true. That's not truth. Those are lies that the devil wants to feed us because he doesn't want people to love each other. He doesn't want strong marriages and strong families. So he's planting that in our society so that we don't do that, so that we don't build strong families. And we have to combat that. Like I said, we have to fight, we have to battle. And the number one way to do that is to have community with each other and talk about it so that you're not alone.
Gold. So good. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for being on here. This has been awesome. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. If Natalie or I can help you in any way, please reach out. Let us know how we can help you. I've had a lot of people on Instagram and asking all these questions. But if you missed any part of this, you can go back and watch the whole thing in a little bit on YouTube. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.